I welcome everybody on behalf of Bandra Kurla CP Study Circle. We have with us eminent faculty Avinash Rawani ji, who will be taking this VCM on changes in reporting requirements. I will just introduce the speaker. CA Avinash Rawani ji is a BCom FCA DISA. He is in practice for last almost 27 years. And he practices in the firm name Rawani and Company in the field of direct tax audit and company law matters. He is member of various study circles and study groups of WRC. He has delivered lectures in various study circles, SIRC, ICA, BCA, Chamber of Tax Consultant, other corporate forums or organization. He has given around 500 lectures on topics of income tax and company law. He is visiting faculty for corporate houses and IIM. He has contributed articles to various study groups and websites, including ICA Journal. He is core team member of ICA in handling e-filing helpdesk on issues of uploading, filing, and various e-tax audit reports and EIT returns mandated under provisions of Income Tax Act, especially on mighty member of Direct Tax Committee for the year 2018, presently member of various study group of ICA, member of Law and Representation Committee of Chamber of Tax Consultant. He has also co-authored various publications like Fringe Benefit Tax published by Malad Chamber of Tax Consultant, Technical Guide on ITR form published by Direct Tax Committee of ICI, Guidance Note on Revised Tax Audit Report notified in 2018, published by Direct Tax Committee of ICI, part of team member and contributor to Practitioner Guide to Audit of Small Entities. He contributed to recent publication of CLG of ICI to the book on Technical Guide on Easy Incorporation of Company. With this brief introduction, I welcome Shri Avinash Rawani ji and request him to take over the session.
Thank you, Mangesh, for your kind introduction, and thankful and to everybody, especially the team members of Bandra Kurla Study Circle. I think first I had given one time I have given attended this meeting as 2-3 years back, and that's the topic was on basically on DA for income tax liability. So today's topic per se is about this changes in the reporting requirements. That is the tax audit which has been now due date, which is that 31st of October. Today we are going to cover the specific point, basically what is overview of 44AB, then general issues relating to the form, and general issues, ethical issues, then reporting about inform to select for issuing the audit report, that is 3C or 3CB, and what are the issues arising from certification of these forms, and how judicial pronouncements will affect your conducting of audit. And last but not the least, that is electronic uploading of audit report. Is how the audit report has to be uploaded, and what are the precautions which are to be taken while uploading, and what are the changes which have been made recently. And I would be covering not much in detail, and I will just give you an overview, and wherever if any issues are there or any queries are there, and basically just note it down. And once I conclude with this my discussion, then we can take up the queries. Almost it will take not more than 1.5 hours to this for this presentation, and we'll have a good time of half an hour to for the question answer session. So it basically the bread and butter of chartered accountants profession, because introduced in 1984, made effective from 85-86 onwards, and almost around 30 years this tax audit has been done. The last amendment was there on 13th of August 2018, wherein 9 new points were added in the form reporting. And from 1st of October, there are another 3 changes which are added in the tax audit report, that you need to incorporate these changes in the forms for any reports which are signed effective from 1st of October 2020. So that should be kept in mind. So if you are uploading the report which is not in consonance with the notified form as of 1st of October, then your tax audit report may be treated as defective, and various changes are there made in the Form 3CD. That is basically one of the reason here is that the government wants to catch all the information in case of more than 5 crores and to help them in assisting the assessment procedure. So this was the basic reason. Now coming to the roles and responsibility of the chartered accountant is doing the tax audit. And while considering or while doing the tax audit, you have to go through the auditing standards, accounting standards, which are notified by the ICI. One of the mistakes which are being made here is that accounting standards and auditing standards are not being given importance while doing the tax audit. And this is the biggest mistake which is happening over here. So one thing is that when you are doing the tax audit now, tax audit accounting standards which are prescribed by institutes are being made mandatory, and you have to give the information based on the accounting standards and are notified. So one question may come here that we are doing the tax audit under the Income Tax Act. Why accounting standards play an important role over here? Basic reason is because accounting standards are notified by ICI, and being a part of the ICI member, it is our responsibility that we should follow the accounting standards which are prescribed by the ICI. And though you are maybe this may be the companies, we are definitely following accounting standards which are notified by the Companies Act. Either it may be Ind AS or it may be other accounting normal accounting standards. But the same needs to be followed and reported accordingly in the tax audit report also, which is what the guidance note on the or issued by institute says. And wherever you want any clarification or wherever you are stuck any issue, how to report about that. We have the guidance note issued by the institute, and you can just refer to the guidance note. And this guidance note is updated from time to time based on the changes which are made in the Form 3CD. And direction, basically one more reason which is here is required to be mentioned, that ethical requirements in regard to the communication with the previous auditors and audit needs to be taken care of before signing the report. So we have at present, if you see, a person who is a chartered accountant can sign up to 60 tax audit reports. 45 limit was increased 2 years back and made to 60 tax audits. So if there is a firm of chartered accountants in which there are more than one partner, then accordingly the number of audits get multiplied. And you have to follow this regime that this much tax audit reports can be signed by the tax auditor. And this limit does not include the tax audit reports which are issued under presumptive taxation. It also should be kept in mind. And secondly, one of the area where this professional misconduct has been found out, that is communication is not being done with the previous auditor. When the audit assignment is accepted, when it was done by the any other professional. So this is one of the mistakes which has been continuously made, and more this complaints are being received by the institute for airing chartered accountants. So first and the foremost thing, our responsibility is that whenever our client approaches us for doing a tax audit for any assessment year, then definitely it is our prerogative that we review the necessary communication. And question may come that last 2-3 years the ISSC was not covered by the tax audit, but now it has been covered by tax audit. Then whether the communication will be done. The guidance note says that yes, definitely the communication has to be with the previous auditor. That is, whenever the accounts were audited, last audited. So if there were no tax audits in the last 2-3 years or 5 years, 6 years, whatever it was done, the communication needs to be done. And now you can do the communication through email mode also, and then no objection certificate can be received through email also. That is also permitted. But communication should be done. So that should be kept in mind. This is the role. Then coming to the provisions of section 44 AB per se. Basically, it is audit which is required to be done for the tax purposes. And the purpose of here to is that the books of accounts are properly maintained and they faithfully reflect the income of the taxpayer. This is the reason why tax audit was introduced. And whatever the claims which are and the deductions by SSC, that needs to be certified. The SSC, the auditor has to certify the claims whether they are eligible for that. That is the purpose of the tax audit. Then through income of the SSC has to be reflected. And the here is that it is the audit to be done to facilitate the tax administration. That is, you are doing the tax audit on behalf of the income tax department, and charging fees to the client for the work which has been done on behalf of the client. So their purpose here is to save the time of the tax officer. That tax officer, whatever the time which is saved of the tax officer should be utilized for the more and more investigational aspect of the case. And now once this faceless assessment has come, the tax audit report will play a major role in deciding any issues related to claim or issues related to the deductions which have been certified. So please be very particular and please be very specific while certifying the tax audit from this year. Then challenges we are facing in tax audit, that which auditing standards should be made applicable, what auditing standards will be applicable. We have to study the auditing standards in detail and also the accounting standards. And we need to give the notes which, so if you are doing the audits under the Companies Act, in Companies Act we are preparing notes to the accounts in which we are giving the accounting policies being given. On the similar lines, the accounting policies which are followed by the SC needs to be given in the tax audit. So that should also form a part of the and the statement of accounts. So that should be kept in mind. Secondly, one question may come that in income tax also we have ICDS which are applicable. So ICDS are applicable. ICDS is basically in ICDS, if there is any variation which has been found out, which is not in line with the what is stated by accounting, then that has to be reported. That has to be reported as the addition or deduction of income. So that is the specific restriction of reporting is to the extent. That should also be kept in mind, because in many cases where errors have been found out for non-reporting of such details appropriately, we have to cases that subsequent slides when I cover each of these clause. Then e-filing of tax audit report, we have to audit report is that is required to upload through his email, through his user ID and password on the income tax website, and the changes which have been made in the last year and whatever the judgments which have come in the last year, and when you are relying on any such judgment, ensure that based on this judgment, if you are giving any comment, then that should form a part of notes to the tax audit report. That has to be taken. And now we have annual information returns, because now on 26th of September, the form has been revised and we have a new annual information return form, is shortly referred to as Form 26A. And all in that, major of the informations are being covered, and some information which are relevant to the tax audit have to be reported. So this should not be ignored while doing the tax audit. So that is, and then income tax returns. There are many changes which are happening, and most of this information which are linked to the tax audit report. So when you are filing the income tax return, whatever the allowances or disallowance or claims which are certified in the same accepted and reported income return correctly. And all these issues and about the practical issues, all these issues are referred to in guidance note. Latest it was revised in July 2018. You can just refer to the guidance. These guidance notes are available for free of cost. You can download it in a soft copy from the institute's website. It is available under the resources, and you can take the help while conducting the tax audit. Then some of the issues like this are asked at the time of assessment. That is when the assessment is undertaken, the balance informations, etc. These all documents are being asked. So basically, when you are doing the tax audit, they should be obtained and accordingly reported. And you should not just ask a general remarks. In many tax audit report, it has been seen that general remarks are being given. So it is basically our priority when we are given some work. It has to be done in a proper purpose and proper way and a proper, so the purpose for which it has been introduced, that has to be solved. Otherwise, it has no relevance, because now it has been seen in many cases. Despite of this, the changes which have happened, the quality of quality of tax audit review has been challenged, because whatever the audit reports which have been done as reviewed the Controller Auditor General of India, which is the main body which looks after all this, information. That is, whatever the reports are there, they have come up with the details that vague statements are being reported by the chartered accountants, and whether the accounts cannot be ascertained. Should be this type of things should be avoided in the report. Any information which is not available, or you are unable to obtain certain information, then that disclaimer remark should be there in the report. Because if you see, when you are filling up the tax audit utility form, the response is in that, from the drop down box, each area you have wherein you want to report, report. And this form has a character, each of this cell has a character limit of 2000 words. And in 2000 words, if you cannot, 2000 characters, if you are able to complete your comments within the 2000 characters, then it has to be seen that you attach a separate sheet. You can write down on this word, and you can just convert it into PDF, submit, and upload it as a part of tax audit report, and this can be also be done. The spirit with which the tax audit is done is being questioned by the CAG, and CAG is observed that in almost around 230 cases wherein the tax audit report was not relied upon. They have not seen the tax audit report, and without tax audit report, they have just done the assessment, and they put the 183.49 crores. In 233 cases, it has been
In the
found that
meeting, this meeting is being recorded.
Revenue was to 228 crores. And basically, the common mistakes where it is happening, that is reporting, non-reporting of capital expenditure, incorrect deductions, incorrect provisions for warranty, interest, back dates, prior period expenditure, penalties, 43B items, 40A3, and 40 AIA violations are being used. So almost, if you see, only around the 54 clauses which we have in the tax audit report, almost around major of this details are forming a part of certification, and these are not being reported properly. And to control these lapses, this institute has come up with a tax audit review quality review board. The tax audit quality review board has been set up by the institute, wherein it collects the audit report. This audit report is signed by the professionals. They are being taken from the income tax department, and being based on this review work which is done, the necessary action is being taken for such erring chartered accounts. So this board is divided into this tax audit review is divided into spread out into four regional councils, and and from each regional council, certain numbers of audit reports are being reviewed on an annual basis. The team of the professionals who are reviewing the report, and then they are reporting it to the tax audit quality review board, and then if any issues are found out, they are being questioned, and the necessary actions are being taken. So please be very particular, and please be very specific while reviewing this game. Turnover criteria, basically everybody knows that businesses have a separate turnover criteria, because if you have a turnover, then you are liable for tax audit. But there are certain amendments which have been made in the current financial year, which will be we are covering in the next few slides. That is turnover exceeding ₹1 crore, and then if your turnover is less than 5 crore rupees from assessment year 2021, satisfy certain criteria that you are exempted by tax audit. Professionals, we all are aware that professionals 50 lakhs is the tax audit limit. That is, you have to if your turnover is exceeding 50 lakhs rupees, then by the tax audit. Then we have another, that is presumptive tax assessors. That is those who are declaring lower profit. Basically, in case of resident individuals, resident HUF, and residential partnership firms. So they are required to, if their turnover is less than 2 crore rupees, and they don't report the profit at the specified percentage of 6% or 8% in case of banking transaction and this cash transaction respectively, then they are required to get the audits done. So this is another category of persons covered by the tax audit. Then SSCs who are covered by this 44 AD, but in current year, if they wish to withdraw from this profit declaration, then they are also required to get the account audited. They have to maintain the books of accounts and gets the accounts audited. And once you have withdrawn from this taxation scheme, then you cannot re-enter in this scheme you can definitely re-enter the scheme, but after the 5 years. So next 5 years, you will have to get your books of accounts maintained and audit has to be done. And tax audit conditions have been modified this year. So there are conditions specified, that is 44 AD and 44 AD, that is who are covered. Basically, this is the tax. So if the taxpayer is having more than one business, then it is the turnover has to be taken PAN-based turnover. So all the business turnover has to be accumulated and combined. And what if it is exceeds that particular limit, then it is less than crores, then you are covered by 44 AD. If it is exceeding 2 crores, then you are not covered by 44 AD, and then you are covered by other provisions of 44 AD. Similarly, also the same criteria applies, but the limit here is 50 lakhs. Then once you are opting for this 44 AD or 44 AD, then you are not eligible to claim any deductions which are available to Section 28 to Section 43C. The provision will not apply. And the person who is opting for the presumptive taxation scheme in any year is also required to follow the same scheme for the next 5 years. It is not for them. But if you wish to opt out, you can opt out from the scheme, but then you can re-enter it after completion of 5 years. You cannot re-enter it immediately within the next block of years. Then once you have withdrawn, then you are required to maintain the books of account and get the accounts audit and report accordingly. And SSV who is specified in the specified profession, that is in profession also there is a list of professions which are specified under the profession. And the income does not exceed 50 lakhs. That is the gross income does not exceed 50 lakhs. Your turnover, professional receipts does not exceed 50 lakhs. They are liable for, and you have to declare the profit at the rate of 2%. Otherwise, you are required to get your bank books of accounts audited and submit the audit report. Now, the guidance note says that what should be forming a part of turnover, what should be forming a part of gross receipts, because here it says if your gross receipts turnover exceeds ₹1. Now, what is to be included in the gross profit? What is to be included in the sales or turnover? That will be coming in 2-3 slides. But in brief, only if you want to just check what is covered and what is not covered, then definitely you can just download the guidance note. In that guidance note, we have the full details about what is excluded, what is to be included. So turnover to exclude, that is even a trade discount or turnover discount has been given, then that has to be excluded. Cash discount and rebate has to be excluded. Sales return has to be excluded. Sales proceeds from the transfer of fixed asset has to be excluded from the turnover. Scrap also be excluded from the turnover unless the person is the dealer or person who is dealing in the scrap, that has to be excluded. Then in gross receipts, that's basically when it comes to professionals, gross receipts plays a more important role. It says that out-of-pocket expenses, if it is recovered as by way of a consolidated fees. So if you don't segregate the fees into out-of-pocket expenses and your professional fees separately and you are billing it grossly, then it will form a part of gross receipt. Then any cash assistance which is received or which is receivable, though it is debited as credited as other income, it will form a part of gross receipts and it will be discovered. Any duty drawback which is receivable, payable to any person against exports under the specified scheme, that also has to be, because many cases what happens that the duty drawback income is shown and against this expenses have been deducted. That is what is the duty drawback which is passed on is deducted and net amount is reported. So that net amount should not be you have to report. It is considered the gross and what the duty drawback which is paid or payable to the person, which also will also be forming a part of the gross receipt. Then any reimbursement of expenses in packing, forwarding, freight, insurance, traveling will also be included in the gross receipt. But if the same amount is credited to the separate account, that is, it is not forming a part of profit and loss account, it is forming a part of this. Though it is reported in profit and loss account, but if figure of payment is reported as an income, then that will form a part of the gross receipt and not the gross amount. So that has to be kept in mind. Then gross will exclude, that is advances if it is received for any services which are not yet provided. Sale of any fixed asset, including advance forfeited, that will also not form a part of gross receipt. Any sale of assets which are held as an investment, rental income unless accessible as a business income, dividend of the share on shares if the person is not a dealer in the shares, Interest income unless a person is in the business of providing money. Reimbursement of customs duties unless it is included in the bill itself and not shown separately, and it is not shown as a reimbursement. Then reimbursement of payment received by travel agent. This is for travel agency. Then it is so any payments which is made to the airlines, railways, that is if received by way of a reimbursement, then it will not forming a part of turnover, gross receipt or turnover. With the net amount, whatever commission or whatever the receipt, that will be forming a part of turnover. Unless you are taking the full package too. If it is sold as a full package too, then it will form a part of gross receipt or turnover. Any advertisement reimbursement also, basically advertisement agencies are there who are billing it, the reimbursement, whatever the charges which are paid to print media or this digital media, if they are claimed as reimbursed, then that will not be forming a part of gross receipt. Only commission part will form of gross receipt. That has to be considered. So if they are billing it grossly without any giving any bifurcations, then it will form a part of gross receipt and turnover. Is any share of profit received by a partner of a partnership firm, they will not be forming a part of the profit will not form a part of gross receipt. Right by any amount which is not payable to creditors or any reversal of provision of expenses is being done, that will be excluded from the gross receipt. These are some brief examples which are given to you. And coming to this prescribed, that is person, that is those who are there is residential, residential HUF and residential partnership funds. So if they have business income which is less than for if their turnover is less than 2 crores, then they have to get this go with the provisions of section 44AD, and they are required to report profit at the rate of 6% of the turnover. In case of digital payment, bank payment, 8% in case of turnover, cash turnover. And those are the basically 44AD, 44AE, 44BB, and 44BBB. These are the categories which are covered under 44AB provisions, A, C, E, etc. So 44AE is related to the transportation, wherein you get the income based on your tonnage or based on the number of vessels held in the year. Then about extraction of oil in India, if you covered by 44BB, then 44BBB in this rate of foreign companies which are engaged in the business of turnkey projects, they are required to report a profit of 10% of the turnover. These are the country eligible type of SSCs. Basically, in case of 44AD, there is professionals. Certain category of people are being added in 44AD. So 44 was raised that there is a certain category of person, basically those who are connected with film industries. Then those who are in accounting professions, who are not a qualified chartered accountants, but they are doing the accounting business. They are also covered. Technical consultants are covered, and all type of people which are related to media industries are being covered. Is either by way of actor, cameraman, director. So when you are doing the audit of such type of persons, do not treat them as a businessman. You have to treat them as a professional, and the 44 ADA will be applicable. 50% profit has to be reported in such that has to be. Then coming to the category, Finance Act for 2000 made it mandatory, effective from 1st April 2020. That is, whatever the audits will be done for the assessment year 2021, these conditions will be applicable. So any type of turnover more than 5 crores, then definitely this is called, we have discussed is for business people. Then turnover, if it is exceeding 5 crores, then you are liable for tax audit. But if your turnover is up to 5 crores, and you are a company or LLP, then if you are a company and LLP, if your turnover is less than, then it is applicable. But if your turnover is more than 1 crore, then you have to see that if your turnover is between 1 crore to 5 crore, if your cash receipts and cash payments, total cash receipts and total cash payments, any of this, if it is exceeding 5% of the turnover, then you are liable for tax audit. If your cash receipts and cash payments, any of this are less than 5%, then you are exempted from the tax audit. So basically, aggregate receipt, now what the provision says that aggregate receipt will include all receipts. Basically, capital contribution will also form a part of aggregate receipts. All income, sale of assets, loan taken or loan which was given, which is received back, that will form a part of. It is received in cash. This all are received in cash will form a part of cash receipts. Then aggregate payments will include clients, all expenses of which are paid in cash, purchase of assets repaid in cash, and loans which are given in cash. So that is kept. So what you have to do is just you go through the cash book, receipt side and payment side. Whatever is drawn, whatever is deposited, that should be deducted, and what the amount should be arrived. And whatever the amount is coming, you have to compare with your turnover. So if your turnover is, suppose for example, turnover is 4 crores. 4 crores and 4 crores 5% to 20 lakhs. So if aggregate of your cash receipt or cash payment, any of this, both of this, if they are less than lakhs, then you are exempted from taxes. You are not covered tax. And here you are not required to report the profit at the percentage which are given for the 44 AD. So that is, even if your profit is 1% of the turnover, definitely you can take the benefit of not doing tax in such thing. Then in case of resident individuals, that is individual HUFs and partnership firms, if your turnover is more than 2 crore, then audit will be applicable if you are not reporting individual HUF and so if it is greater than less than 2 crores, audit will be applicable if you don't report the profit at the rate of 6% or 8%. Then 2 crores to 5 crores, again that provision will apply. So that has to be taken into mind. So I hope it's clear to everybody. And this cash limit, this cash payment limit and cash receipts and payment limit is not applicable to professionals. That is 44 professionals. Professional does not comply with this condition. Your turnover is more than 50 lakhs, you are liable for tax audit. And in case your turnover is gross receipts are less than 50 lakhs and you are not receiving 50% of your gross receipts, then you will be liable for this tax audit. So that should be kept in mind. So while filing the returns of income also, in return of income, in part the amendment has been made. That is, first we have to answer certain questions, whether we are declaring the SSC declaring income under only under section 44A, 44B, etc. That has to be there. Then if you select as no, then you will ask whether your turnover or sales receipt is more than exceeds 1 crore, then whether your expenses aggregate income is less than 5% or aggregate this aggregate payments are less than 5%. Answer the question based on this, the tax audit report, whether it is applicable or not. If the tax audit is applicable, it will require you to fill up certain details which are mandated for tax purposes. And one more change which has happened, that the details of the tax auditor has to be given. So now the Aadhaar number of the auditor can be given instead of PAN number. So the auditor wishes that PAN number is not required to be given, Aadhaar number can also be given. So any one of this is given, it is mandatory. It is the person who is signing the tax audit report, that person's PAN number details has to be given. Effective from Finance Act 2020. Now coming to reporting in each of the clause, I will cover most main clauses which are there. That is, in case of indirect tax liability, that is clause 4 of part A. Tax audit report is divided into two, part A and part B. In part A, you have to give basic information, and in part B, you have to give other information without the respective form. So if the SSC is liable for any type of indirect tax payment, this is like excise duty, service tax, customs, etc., then the registration number has to be given. Then this details has to be collected and the necessary evidence has to be placed on record. So if the SSC is doing business across the country, then for the registered office, and along with the registered office, you have to give the registrations that obtained in any of the states of the country, and all these registration numbers has to be given in this reported in this clause 4. So that should be kept in mind. Then about amounts which are not related to basically these certain items are there which is certification is required from the auditor. That is clause number 13, which deals with about that is the accounting this income computation and disclosure standards. And we almost around 10 standards are such clauses that the profit, whether any adjustment is required to be made in the profit or loss account for complying with the provisions of ICBS. So if it is affirmative, if it is yes, then you have to give any additions or reductions, the figures, whatever the addition and reduction has to be made. Now ICDS is there. ICDS is mandatory for all the businessmen who are following for mercantile system of accounting. So if you are following cash system of accounting, then ICDS are not applicable. And even this part is says that this the notes in respect of each of the accounting, this ICDS is required to be given whether there is any addition to the. So basically here the mistakes which are happening, people are not reporting, auditors are not reporting the requirements which are, because just like we have accounting standards, these are the accounting standards which are the standards which are notified by the income tax department. And this is the policy which is followed in respect of each of this income. Here it is required to be given and it has to be reported in the Form 3CD itself. Then any capital asset, if it is converted into stock in trade, then you are required to give a description of the capital asset, date on which this asset was acquired, what was the cost of acquisition, and amount at which the asset is converted into stock in trade. So when the asset is converted into stock in trade, till that date, the capital bill is liable to be charged. So the capital is just to work out what will be the capital gains on chargeable and on this asset. And from once this is converted into stock in trade, from the date of conversion of profit, related profit assets will be chargeable as a business income. This is required to be reported. Then any amount which is not credited to the profit and loss. Now this clause that is clause 16 casts more responsibility on the auditor. So if any amount which is not credited to the profit and loss account and it is directly credited either to reserve or capital account of any partners or proprietors, then these are required to be reported. Whether they are taxable or they are not taxable, the department has to decide. If the auditor has to report that any items which are falling within the scope of 28 and which are not credited to the profit and loss account, that are still basically the income which is chargeable under the profit, but they have not been reported credited to the profit and loss, but they are directly credited to the capital account or reserve, that is to be reported. So any pro forma credits, drawbacks, duty of refund of customs, sales tax, value-added tax, etc., any escalations claim, any other type of income or any other capital receipt, even any capital receipt, even if is that whether that is taxable or not, that is other thing, but you are required to put in clause 16, that should not be forgotten. Then this is one of the biggest challenging tasks of reporting, that is clause number 17, which is applicable to builders and developers and also to the persons who have sold the property. So if you are selling a property, then this clause is required, reporting is required to be done. The auditor has to be required to be, if there is any sale of asset, or in case of SSA other than builders and developers, or in case of builders and developers, section 43 CA, for both this purpose, both this clause reporting is in the same clause. So auditor has to report whether any land or building or both is transferred during the year. If it is yes, then you have to give the details of the property which has been transferred. What is the consideration which is received or accrued, value which is adopted or assets or accessible. So value basically what happens, consideration what is received and what is adopted, because here you have to value adopted or assessed or accessible comes to the stamp duty value. Again, there are various judgment that is from the income tax act point of view. This percentage benefit of 5% or 10% in many cases are being given. So that also has to be kept in mind while reporting under this clause. And this is one question may come, because this item may not be forming a part of profit and loss account. It may not be reported in the balance sheet. This may not be appearing in the balance sheet. Then how to find it out? Then you cast a responsibility on the SSC that you have to go through this the personal bank accounts and also this transactions have happened or not, especially in case of 50C provisions. And one of the biggest advantages, you can get this information from Form 26A also, because now these information are readily available in Form 26A. Even though that information is not available in Form 26A, you are required to verify and report. And report in the Form 26 is mandatory requirement. Then about clause number 28, that is any sum which is paid to employees coming for services rendered, whether this sum was otherwise able as a profit. Now, in many cases, the company, what the company or what the clients do is they tie up with the employee that if they for certain projects, certain profit amount is received, profit amount is realized, some part of the profit will be shared with that. So if any such thing is there, any such thing is done, and if such amount is paid as a claimed as an expenses, then that is not an allowable expenses. So it has to be seen that the necessary which are being done, there should be taken as reported here. Then any sum which is received by the from the employees, that is those who are covered by PF, PSIC or any other fund, then this is required. Clause number 20B reporting has to be done. That is what was the due date and what is the date on which the payment has been made. And here it is to be seen that from due date, that is 5 days grace which was given in PF has now been removed. So the mistake should not happen. And one more thing, it has to be kept in mind this year that March, this due date was extended to 15th of May. So be very particular. So due date would be 15th of May instead of 15th of April for the month of March. Then about reporting of penalty, that is clause number 21A requires to report about the penalties which have been paid. So penalties are of two types. So here penalty, one type of penalty may be from the contractual obligations. And though it may be referred to as a penalty, but it is actually, it is not a penalty. So this type of clause, item should not be reported. Now, a simple case, one example I can give it over to you. That is, if a person is doing turnkey projects and is having a contract with any company or a government authorities, wherein there in the contractual execution there is a penalty clause which is that if you don't complete the contract or you don't comply with the provisions of the contract, then penalty will be levied. So this type of penalties are contractual obligations and not forming a violation of law. Violation of law means basically strictly violation of law. Basically, if there is a person is driving a car and this traffic police has caught him and he is required to pay the penalty, or because of wrong parking he has done, or any fees which has been paid for late filing of returns. This type of are contravention of law. So this should be form a part of penalty. So any such penalty which is debited, that has to be debited as a real form. And if any penalty which is in the compulsory nature, that is, it is supposed to be recovered from third person, then that should be reduced and net amount should be reported in this clause. Then coming to about disallowances, basically, so any disallowance for provision for gratuity, basically it has been seen that the gratuity is being debited to the profit and loss account, but they are not reported. So if the gratuity provision which is there in the profit and loss account and it is not allowable, then that will form a part of reporting in 40A7. So that may because these items are generally included in 43B, but it doesn't form part of 43B, it is forming a part of 40A7. There is a separate clause for reporting this, so that should be kept in mind. And any amount which is paid as to an employee, which is not an allowable expenses under section 40A9, that should be reported correctly. Any liability which is of a contingent nature, and if it is debited to the profit and loss account, because contingent liabilities are not an allowable expense. Unless the liability crystallizes, it does not form a part of expense. So if any such amount is there, then that should be reported, any contingent liability. Then about admissible deduction under section 14A, that is basically when the SSC is earning income, which is an exempt income. And then the 14A disallowances comes into picture, and you have to give the workings about what expenses which are directly incurred and directly incurred in the for earning such type of income, because the law says that if any expense is incurred which is directly or proportionately connected with earning of such income, then it should not be it should be disallowed. It is not forming that will not form a part of expenses. And we have notification number 45 of 2018, wherein in this notification it gives you the entire how this discount has to be made, and that should be taken into consideration. And this is one of the most debatable issue either with the SSC, with the SSC, and also with the assessing at the time of SSC assessment. So if any 14A disallowance has been done in the earlier assessment, that should also be considered while working out the 14A disallowance. And interest, because now this interest becomes payable to MSME industry. So MSME Act is made applicable, and any interest which is debited to the profit and loss account which pertains to payments which is made to MSME, then that is not an allowable expenditure. This should be disallowed under section 36(1)(3), and there is a separate clause for reporting in this clause. Then about section 40A and 40IA, where the TDS is not being deducted. The changes in the if the TDS is not been deducted for any payment which has been made, then 30% of that expenses will form a part of disallowance. And there is a changes amendment which has been made in the Finance Act 2012, that if it says that if the the recipient of the amount has already declared this as an income and has paid the tax on that income, then this disallowance may not be applicable. So in that case, so any such disallowance is reported, ensure that if the person has paid the taxes, recipient has paid the taxes, then you need to follow the procedure. The 26A form has to be obtained from that person, and then if the person gives the form 26A, then this disallowance should not be made. And any such payment which has been made without deduction of tax, then you have to give the name, address, PAN number, date of payment, which is mandatory in reporting in this clause number 20B. And on payment of this TDS, once you deposit this TDS in the subsequent year, that will be allowed as an expenditure in that particular the assessment year in which you have paid the deposited the TDS. So that should be considered while doing the tax audit. Then about the interest, salary, or bonus or commission which is paid to the partners in case of AOPs. AOP such expenses are not allowable. So if any such amounts are paid, then this have to be reported in 20C. So first and the foremost thing here is required that in case of partnership firm, the partnership deed should have the payment of interest remuneration clause in the deed. So if that is not there in the deed, then this becomes disallowable. And any amount which is disallowable, that has to be reported. So commission, salary, bonus, commission, remuneration, or interest which are not admissible, that only has to be reported. So if it is admissible, then it is not required to be reported. Remuneration is paid to be working partners. So if the remuneration is paid to sleeping partners, again it becomes disallowable. Then interest also should be authorized by the deed, and remuneration or interest does not pertain to a period prior from the date of the deed. So if the date of deed in the deed it is stated that if it is for a particular up to a particular period, then that will be allowable up to that particular period. That also should be kept in mind. Then about cash payments, that is cash payment, we all are aware that 40A3 rate with rule 6DD. It covers all types of payment. That is not only revenue payments, but capital payments are also covered. As per the ICA guidelines, ICA guidelines says that if necessary evidence is not available, that is through mail or through account paychecks, then such declarations should be made in this clause, that as the proper evidence is not available, we are unable to verify whether that payment has been made through banking payments made through this is unable to verify. The cash limit has been reduced from 20,000 to 10,000, but for transportation the 35,000 limit still remains. So that should be kept in mind. And the necessary certificate should be obtained from the SSA by way of a representation and should be kept in mind. And here it has been seen in many cases that cash expenses are being debited to the exceeding that limit is being debited, and these entries are available in the cash book, and the SSAs have reported that there are no such cash payments. So these type of mistakes have been identified at the time of assessment. Please keep in mind. And now what it says that when any such cash payment is made, you are required to give the details. That is the name of the person to whom this cash payment has been made. The PAN number of that person has to be made. But there are specific exceptions which are given under the Rule 680. Even if you are following the exceptions, then that reference of that exception should be also made in by way of a note. And now this 269T is also covered by the cash payment. So this also has to be kept in mind. So all these cash payment which are exceeding the specified limit has to be reported. Earlier, till 2018, the certificate was required to be attached along with the Form 360, but now that certificate criteria, this requirement has been withdrawn, so that is not required to be attached with the tax report, but you have to obtain the certificate has to be taken from the SSC. That should be kept in mind. Then about this 14A, we have already discussed. In 14A circular notification number 45/2018 says that you have to obtain the management representation as to income which is going to be claimed as exempt for the year. Now this has two issues. So that is, first issue is that if the expense which is directly related to earning the exempt income, then that should be definitely disallowed. but there are certain classes, there is certain expenses which cannot be directly related. In that case, it is said that you have to take the average of the investment. That is, what was the investment in asset which is earning an exempted income. So average of opening and closing balance has to be taken, and 1% of that will be forming a part of your disallowance. This is what the notification number 45 of 2000 stated there. Now, in many cases, it may happen that the company's income may be exempted because of 10A, 10B, 10C. Then, if any disallowance is not made on this account, so any expenses which has been claimed directly and which is related to this clause, then that disclosure also has to be made. That you have called there because of this nature of the project, which is situated under the backward area or such type of industries, they are exempted. Then this also should be reported in the by way of a note. Then about deductions which are allowable under section 32 AC, 35 AD, 35 CCC, and 35D. So this the auditor has to certify this, that whether the SSA is entitled to claim these deductions or not. And for claiming such deduction, it is required that audit report in that respective audit of that respective section has to be done, and that has to be uploaded. If the audit report not uploaded, then these deductions are not available. So be careful while reporting under this clause, that first this audit is done under this clause, and then that report is uploaded. Then only you mention the figure that these figures are allowable. And any amount of profit which is chargeable to tax under section 41, then you need to give the training, because 41 is such type of housing you have provided for any such expenses in the early area. But now that liability ceases to exist. But then you have to give the details of under which year you have claimed, which year you had claimed as an expense, and which you are offering for the tax. That has to be kept in mind. Then about section 40A to B, that is clause number 23, which deals with payments which are made to persons specified in the 42A to B. Now everybody would be aware what is covered by 40A to B. 42A to B basically payments which are made to related persons. And for this purpose, what you have to do first, before starting the audit, you have to obtain the list of such persons and what are the details of expenditure which are incurred. That is mandatorily required. So that by the time of doing the tax audit, you can easily verify. Then you have to review the relevant accounts and identify such payments. And it's 42A to B is not restricted to revenue payments. It also includes capital payments also. Then in case of companies, we have under section 301 under the 56 Act. Then AS 18 is applicable. MGT 7 has the related party details. This should be verified. AOC 2 is available. That will be helpful. 48 to B and section 56 are much wider than AS 18. So in case of companies, this all information will be readily available. But definitely you have to you have to give the full particulars of transaction, whether that is admissible or inadmissible, that is not to be reported. You have to just state about the payment. So which are debited to the books, and disclosure is suggested if such information is not available, or even if the information is given, we have to make it that as per the declaration or as per the information given to us, there are no other payments which are made to persons who are covered by section 40A to B. And if you see, in Bombay, we have Bombay Chartered Accountants Society has come up with a way of reporting this tax audit report, what is to be reported where and how it has to be reported where. This detail also will be available. You can just take the this also is a very detailed guidelines are given under each clause. What type of disclaimer, what has to be made, what type of or how it has to be issued, or everything is available. Clause by clause details are there. You can just refer to that also. Then 45, that is 43B. 43B reporting is to be done in clause number 25, 25(1)A and 25(1)B. So basically 25(1)A relates to whatever the payments which are outstanding as of previous, which are paid in the subsequent in the current year. So whatever the disallowance which was done in the previous assessment year, and subsequently that amount is paid on in the current period. This current period basically here it says from the date of the after date of filing of return of income till 31st of March. So that has to be covered. So it has to be reported. So whatever was there on 1st of April. Now I will just share one example with you. that if the tax was outstanding on 1st of April 2000, this is work which we have to do. What was there on 1st April 2000 in the balance sheet of 31st March 2019, the outstanding was 2 lakhs. But till last year due date was 30th of September. Just for example purpose, so 30th of September, 1,50,000 was paid. So 50,000 was offered as it was disallowed. So in this for 50,000, so this will be forming a part of your balance. Now this 55,000 is paid from 1st October 2019 to 31st March. Then 25,000 will be allowable in the current assessment year, and 25,000 will be reported as which is not paid. So this is paid and this is unpaid. So unpaid amount will be allowable as expenses. On the similar lines, 25(1)(b) covers whatever the expenses which are outstanding as at the end of financial year. That is to this year's financial year ending is 31st March 2020. And for this example, for the purpose, this purpose that outstanding liability as on 31st March, and on 30th this 30th November, 1 lakh is paid, and suppose the due date is expected to be 30th December. Now here what it says that you have your tax audit report filing date is 31st of October as of now, unless and until it is extended. So here it's November is the due date of filing the return, and SSC has the option to pay the tax up to 30th of November, but the auditor to issue the report till 31st of October. This will be a challenging task. So here what you have to do on the date of signing of report, whatever has to be there, that has to be reported till the date of signing of the report, and balance should be informed yes, whatever is paid and whatever is not paid. So that should be reported in this clause. Now about prior period items, there is a difference between the expenditure. These prior period items has to be reported in clause 27B. And prior period items basically those are for their prior period item is not applicable, because they are debiting the expenses as and when it is paid, and this will come where the mercantile system of accounting. And one year biggest mistake which has been made, that if a liability, if it has crystallized during the current year, though it relates to the prior period, then it will not be treated as a prior period item. It will be treated as a current year item. So, for example, a contract which is there, which is a contract which was completed 2 years back, and that contract was in that contract, the contingent liability which was there in that contract, and that contingent liability as contingent item has now been crystallized. That is, some court order has come or something has happened, or due to some the liability has arisen. Though it relates to that period, it will not be treated as the prior period item. It will be treated as the current year's liability. So any material adjustment necessitated by the circumstances, though related to the previous years but determined in the current year, will not be considered as a prior period item. And in AS5 also, notified by under section 145, it says that any error, that is accounting standards which are notified by the income tax department, section 145, it says that if any item which related to arises in the current year as a result of mistake or omission of accounts, that will form a part of prior period items. We have forgotten some to book some expenditure, but now we are paying it and booking it, and we are paying the expense, then it will become a prior period item which will be allowable. Then coming to 269, assess acceptance of loans and the loans, that is the year you have to give details about the name from the name of the person from whom you have accepted the loan. Then it is the loan amount here exceeds 20,000 during the year. So what the provision says that no person accept loans deposit otherwise than by an account page or draft or any other banking loans. So this is mandated. The amount of such loan or deposit, or the aggregate of such amount of such loan or deposit on the date of accepting of such loans or deposit or earlier by such person from the deposit is remaining unpaid, the amount of aggregate amount remaining unpaid has to be reported. The amount of the aggregate amount referred to in clause A together with the amount of the aggregate amount referred to in clause B is 20,000 or more. So, example, you can say this says that if any loan amount is accepted, now for example, suppose 20,000 rupees is opening balance which is there. So up to the 20,000 rupees, so if a person is accepting another amount of 20,000, then you are required the current year amount accepted is 20,000. But that 20,000 has to be accepted either by way of a check or through a bank draft or through NEFT or this RTGS. So if you accept that loan, that becomes 26 years assets, and you are required to disallow that amount, and there is a penalty of rupees equivalent to the loan amount accepted. And if any loan which is accepted which is exceeding 20,000, you are required to give the full details, the name of the person. Then a PAN number has to be given. If absence of PAN, other number can be given this year. From this year it has started. Then address of the person has to be given, what amount is accepted, what is the maximum amount, and you have to give the details whether that amount has been accepted by cash, by check, or by the check, or by RTGS, or through banking mode. That has to be given. So that will be accordingly will be. This is mandatory information. This has to be given by all the SSCs if the loans, such loans are accepted. And this for this purpose, banks loans which are taken from the banks are excluded from this. These are not required to be reported. That is what the acts. On the similar lines, any amount which is paid, which is exceeding the same or in the same way, to be given. And then for the repayment of loan, the liability 269T says about 10,000 rupees, not there. Then coming to the payment side, now this is the cash summary and the which clause what has to be reported. So in case of payment, when it comes, that is 7.3 per day maximum cash limit. Per day maximum cash limit is 10,000 in case of any expense, and transporter it is 35,000. In case of receipts, section 269 SS says that taking or accepting deposits maximum up to 20,000, and section 269 also covers per person per day single transaction, or per person per day for single event or occasion up to rupees 2 lakhs. So this is also covered by 269T. So that also should be done. And if such transactions are entered, you have to ensure that the SFT statement is being filed, because SFT statement is mandatory. In case of repayment of deposits, again the limit of 20,000 rupees remains. And but 48, there is a contradiction. There is 48 says that you cannot pay more than 10,000. So if the repayment of loan is done 20,000, but maximum that is 20,000. If the loan is repaid is exceeding 20,000, we are required to report in 269T. But yes, as per 48.3, you cannot pay more than 10,000. So if a loan amount is outstanding, 19,000 is outstanding, and you are making that payment 10,000 and 9,000, then this is not required to be reported over here in 269. But if it takes 269 this has to be, even it covers the deposit. There is a deposit, the deposit which are received from the customers, they are also covered by the 269T provision. So this will be kept in mind. Then about whether there is any change in holding. So when you are doing the audit of the company, so if there is any change in shareholding which is exceeding 51%, whatever the carry forward losses are there, that losses are not, losses cannot be carry forward. So that losses becomes redundant. So here it says that if there is any change in shareholding, you are required to report, and any 51% of the voting power. So whatever the shareholding was there on the date of the loss, and whatever the shareholding you are there on the claiming, that should be the 51% shareholder should be the same. Then only that loss will be allowed. So this is required to be reported here. So if there is any change in voting power, but what the provision section 79 says that this if there is a change in the voting power which is exceeding 51% due to death or gift to any relative, then that is excluded from that. So that should be kept in mind. Then about speculation clause. So those who are doing the speculation business, in there they are covered, they are required to, that type of SSCs are to report in part B clause number 32C about the losses which are losses from the speculation business. So the additional, the auditor here is required to furnish the details of the speculation loss which is referred to in section 73. Then details of the loss which is recorded, that is in respect of any specified business. The auditor has to state whether the company is deemed to be carrying on such business or not. If the company has discontinued this business, then they will not be liable to claim their losses. So clause number 36C, clause number 32D, and clause number 32E all are interrelated for reporting. So that this should be considered. Then about the losses which are there from the business, that is specified business, 10A, 35D, these are there. So this under this, if the particular project is covered by this section, then the deduction is eligible, and that deduction is eligible only provided the respective audit report is submitted. And just if the report is not submitted, then this is not allowed as allowed deduction. And also it is required that for claiming such deductions, you are required to get the return of income filed on or before the due date. So if the refund is of income is filed after the due date, then these deductions are not allowed. So while doing the reporting under this clause, that is especially under this 33 clause, you have to be very particular that you have to ensure that the first the audit report is filed, then this tax audit report is on, and accordingly along with the tax audit report, the form this return is also of income is also filed. Then the claim is required to be verified, which is the additional responsibility, because for some of the cases what may happen, the auditor may be separate for the reporting this 10 audit 10 but this report, even that audit is done by that person, other auditors, then auditor's responsibility is that whether the claim, whatever the claim is allowable, it has to be reported. So this will be an additional responsibility on the part of the auditor. Compliance of TDS provisions and TCS provisions. So TCS provisions is not being reported. So if there is any non-compliance of TCS provision, that is also required to be reported in 34A of the 34. And this 34 clause is divided into two parts, that is 34A and 34B. In 34A, you are required to the amount details, what is the amount paid under that particular section under particular TAN number. So if the SSE is having info more than one TAN number, these details are required to be given based on the number of TANs which is held. The nature of number, TAN number, and nature of payment which will be made under that particular TAN. Similarly, for TCS also, for the particular TAN number, whatever is required deduct for the TCS is given. The TAN number of the SSE has to be given, amount on which TDS is deducted or collected, and amount which deposited, and whether it is the short payment or the short payment. So that also has to be mentioned. If the SSE is required to deduct tax at a specified person, and if he deducts at a lower rate, if he has not collected the lower certificate from SSE, then that amount will become disallowable and will be added to the income. So that has to be that 30% of that income will become charged, will be added to the income in the total income while preparing the computation. And then also now additional requirement is that the return filing also has to be given. Date of return filing also has to be given. What was the due date and when the return was filed. And whatever in the return of income, that is TDS return, all the entries have been covered or not, that also has to be verified. So while doing the tax audit, you have to ensure that each and every account where it is required to be deducted, whether that is TDS is deducted or not. If it is not deducted, then you are required this report over there in this clause that these entries are there wherein the TDS is not deducted. And if any interest is paid on account of delay in payment, so that also has to be reported in the clause number 34C. So and that has to be also reported number-wise. There is any interest which is paid under section 2011A or 206C7. So this is the three covered under this clause 34. Then any demand which is raised or reward which is issued, clause 41 says that you have to give these details of any demands which is raised or refund which is issued under any tax law other than income tax act and wealth tax act. So for that purpose, you have to assess where the assessment has been completed. Though this may be a duplication of entries in case of corporate assets, because there you are required to give and the report is required to be given. But tax audit is different than the company's audit. So this audit is verified by the income tax department. So even if there is reported in that specified clause or in the notes to the accounts, but it is required to be given in this work. Now other clauses are there. There has been changes or amendments which have happened this current year. That is, we have a notification of 23rd August 2019, which it says that to boost the sales of vehicles, additional depreciation of 15% was to be given given to the who purchased the vehicle from 23rd August 2019 and have put the vehicle to use up to 31st March 2020. So any vehicle which is bought during this vehicle will be eligible for claiming 15% additional depreciation. So if the depreciation was 15%, they will be getting 15% additional depreciation. So that has to be kept in mind while reporting in clause number 18. Then interest or interest which is paid or payable to SME, this is disallowable. You have to report accordingly in clause number 22. Any profit which is charged under section 41 and for computation thereof. The computation is how this profit is work out, that has to be given. Unpaid interest, because Finance Act 2019 stated that any this 43B now has a clause that any interest is equal to the NBFC is also covered by section 43B. And this will be a biggest challenge this year because we have a loan moratorium over here. And loan moratorium, whenever the SSC may not be liable to pay interest or the installment. But that interest is definitely required, though it is not paid, it is required to be debited to the profit and loss account. And if this interest is not paid on or before the due date of filing of return of income, then that will be forming Article 43B that has to be kept in mind. Then about the most debatable clause, that is credit. Income which is chargeable to section 5629, that is in reported to required to that is any advances which has been received which is forfeited. Any advances which are received which is forfeited, then that will form a part of section this clause number 29A 5629, that is advance received for the sale of property, and now there is no transaction, that will become taxable. So that also has to be reported. Transfer pricing assessment. So in case where the transfer pricing assessment has been adjustment has been done, then if the assess is covered by transfer pricing audit, then transfer pricing audit, this report is required to be details about the transfer pricing audit done and any primary adjustments related to the transfer pricing which has been done under by the transfer pricing auditor, that has to be mentioned in clause number 38. Then interest related to foreign party exceeding 1 crore, this clause has been kept in abeyance. Therefore, this clause is not applicable for assessment year 21-22, assessment year 2021. Then about reporting of reductions in 115OA, because when the company has received a dividend, company is liable to pay a dividend distribution tax, and so if that company pays the dividend ultimately to the shareholders, then that has to be claimed as a deduction. So these all informations are to be given in clause number 36 part of the part B. So, and if the SSC is covered by any cost audit, central excise audit or service tax audit, that has to be reported. So that any disagreement if the audit is done under that various clause. Clause number 37, clause number 38 and 39 relates to cost audit, central excise audit and service tax audit. So if there is any disagreements which has happened, so disagreements, if it has any happened in respect of central excise audit or any points which are raised or any demands which is raised, and there is a disagreement or the matter is in dispute, if any disputes are there, then you are required to report in that clause. These reports are not required to be attached along with the tax audit report, but cost audit report is mandatory. Cost audit report is required to be attached at the time of uploading the 3CD. It is mandatory. A service tax audit and excise audit is not required to be reported. So any demands and any thing is there, then you don't forget to report it that in clause number 41. That is because this clause is also interlinked. Then if the SSC is liable to file acceptance statement, so then if this is where this is required, this is the additional requirement. There is clause number 42 requires the auditor to report that what was the due date of this filing the acceptance statement, when the report has been submitted, and whether all the reportable transactions are being covered or not. So that also has to be there. So one way other audit, SFT audit is also covered under the tax audit. So see number of audits which are being covered. Then opting out of there is presumptive taxation. So if the there is opting out of presumptive taxation held in the earlier year, then they are liable to tax audit. This has to be kept in mind. any qualified opinion is there, definitely qualified opinion should be reported in that specified clause, because in this form number 3CB and 3CA, you have report wise under which clause we want to give a qualified opinion. You have to select that cell and you have to report in that clause. So if any mistake has happened, revision of tax audit report is possible. Tax audit can be revised subsequently, but there are three reasons for revision of tax audit. So revision of tax audit, that is will be coming in the next 2 slides. Once I complete it, when can be to revise, I will be covering that also. Then selection of main form of audit report, that is which form has to be issued, form number 3CA or 3CB. So 3CA, this SS 700 says that SSC's responsibility is to maintain the books of accounts and preparation of form 3CD with details. This is nowhere stated in the form 3CD. So whenever you are signing this form 3, issuing a report, 3CA report has to be issued when the SSC is covered by any other audit. And 3CB is to be issued when the only tax audit is being is not covered by tax audit. So in 3CA, you don't have such type of details over here, because 3CA already says that they are considering the company audit report which is there in the other act. So reference of that act has to be given in form number 3CA, and the date on which the audit report was signed and who has signed the tax audit report, that report, that also has to be given. So auditor's responsibility, what it says, the SS 700 says that verification of the details and issue the report in form 3CA or 3CB. This is the responsibility of auditor. And audit involves performing procedures to obtain the audit evidence. So whatever is stated in 3CD, you are required to obtain the evidence about it, and you have to keep this evidence on record with you. So that is, and the auditor's responsibility is to verify the statement of particulars which are given under section 4480. And this form 3CD will part the form of your main audit report 3CA or 3CB. This is the responsibility of the auditor. So both this responsibility, SSC's responsibility should always form a part of the main audit report. So that should always be there, that SSC has prepared the details and auditor has verified. So that should always form a part of the report. And if there is any difference of opinion between the management and the tax auditor, and if you don't have sufficient information which is available, then you can put a disclaimer remark and you can just type it on the word sheet and you can stamp it, sign it, and attach to the report. And at the time of uploading, you have the option of uploading these details also, so that can be uploaded. So any issues which is arising, you are not unable to take any decisions, then refer to the guidance of which we already discussed. Clause number 30C related to double tax avoidance agreement, and clause number 44 related to the compliance related to GST is kept in abeyance till March 31st, 2021 by circular number 10 of 2020. Then from 1st October 2020, we have a notification number 8220 of yeah. Is anything? Yes, any issues are there? There are 3 changes which are made from 1st October 2020. That is while you are doing that, in form number 3CD, clause number 8, in A, that is, if you are doing the audit for the company can opt for the alternative taxation scheme under section 115BA, 115BAA, and 115BAB. So these are the benefit, these options are available. So the tax audit now 3CD now requires to report whether the SSC has opted for this scheme or not. And for opting these schemes, you are required to file the requisite form, that is form number 10 IC and other forms which are notified for this 10 IA, 10 IB, 10 IC. These are the forms notified for selection. So that has to be obtained first. So once these forms are obtained, then you have to select whether yes or no. So if you select yes, then accordingly the adjustments has to be made, because whatever the additional this carry forward of losses related to certain provisions, this won't be applicable. And whatever the additional depreciation which was required to be claimed, because if you purchase the asset and it is put to that plant and this SSC into the manufacturing unit, and he has purchased plant and machinery put for use in the previous year, and that was the depreciation, additional depreciation of 20% is required to be is available to that SSC. So once you are opting for this scheme, this additional 20% depreciation you cannot claim it. And suppose that asset was put to use in the last half year, that is from 5th of October 2019 prior to 5th of October 2018 till 31st of March. Then you were eligible to claim only 50% of that, is 10% additional 10% depreciation was available last year, and 10% depreciation would be claimable in this year. So accordingly, so that 10% additional depreciation would stand withdrawn, and all losses which are eligible, that is section 35 to sub clauses, that deductions are there, that also will not be eligible. So that according to the this in clause number 18, you will have to adjust the written down value accordingly. That has to be reduced from the allowance, this additional depreciation which is not allowable, that has to be reduced. In clause number 32, that is whatever the blood fraud clauses, losses are there or depreciation losses are there, any allowance this loss which is relating to the one disallowable under section 115DAA, then that also has to be reduced, and according to the remark has to be given. And if the it says that if the assessed depreciation is less and no appeal is pending, then you have to take the depreciated written down value as well is computed in the by the assessing of at the time of assessment. You cannot take it as per the books of account. So that has to be kept in mind. Then the loss and depreciation allowable in clause number 2 and 3 of subsection, this will not be allowable, and full effect of that has been given, it has to be considered, and accordingly the adjustment has to be made. Then coming to the part that is what are the duties of the chartered accountants, that is what reports they are required to file. See, first and the foremost thing, audit report has to be uploaded by SSV, audited by the chartered accountant under his email, his user ID and password, that is starts with ARCA on the Income Tax Department's website. And this report, this audit is complete when the audit report is approved by the SSC. So if the audit report is not approved by the SSC within that specified time, this report will be considered as not as filed. Now, suppose for example that due date it does not get extended, and 31st of October is the due date for uploading the tax audit, filing the tax audit report. So on 31st of October, you have filed the tax audit report, but the SSC approves that report subsequently on the next day, that is 1st of November. Your date of filing will be treated as 1st of November and not 31st of October, and you will be liable for penalty under section 271B. So that is there. So that should be kept in mind. Then all type of audit, tax audit reports, transfer pricing over, even if international transfer pricing, domestic transfer pricing, this MAT audit under section 219 115JB, then any other form that is where the deductions are being claimed. This report is, all these report due dates are this area get completed on approval by the approved by the SSC, not from the date of uploading by the So on completion of assignment, once the assignment is completed, you have to sign the report. Signature may be digital signature. Digital signature issued forms is also verified, valid, and is valid. And issuer has also come up with the notification granting the that you can issue the audit report digitally signed in this foreign appointment. Form 3CA, 3CB to be signed by the chartered accountant. Definitely it is a report which is issued. Mention the MRN number, then foreign registration number is required to be given. Membership number of the CA who is signing, auditor who is signing is given. Then one question will come whether the Form 3CB has to be signed by the SSC. Definitely yes, because why not? Because definitely it is the responsibility of the SSC, auditor's responsibility is to verify the details. So definitely signing off should be there, SSC signature should be obtained. And it is always preferable that for the CA to put the initials and stamp on each page of annexure of the 3CB, because there are many cases which has been seen wherein the pages are being replaced after the tax audit report are being issued. Now coming to the revision part, the tax audit can be revised subsequently. So the reason for the revisions, you have to give what reasons the audit report is required to be revised. And suppose you have issued the tax audit report earlier, but due to after the annual general meeting has been conducted and some there is revision is there in the account, then this audit can be revised. If there is any change of law or any judgment which has come, and that requires you to modify this, revise the tax audit report, then definitely that can be revised. So any tax audit report revised other than this reason will become questionable and will make the person accountable for his mistake. And now the action has been started started by the department. So please be very particular. If there is any mistake which has been found out by the department, definitely the penalty is there on the chartered accountants. Though it is appealable, penalty is appealable under the tribunal, but definitely it questions our integrity and integrity of the profession. And while revising the tax audit report, you have to consider the standards of auditing 560, which deals with subsequent events, which has that is when the subsequent event has happened, and due to the subsequent event, the audit report is required to be available, and then you should do it in accordance with the guidelines which are given in SA 560, and it says about the you have whatever the changes in the events has happened, that also has to be verified, and the appropriate evidence has to be granted, and you have to obtain the reasonable assurance. And whenever the audit report is revised, it will be treated as a revised audit report. It will not be a fresh it has to be reported as revised tax audit, revised report, and it has to be, all these details has to be mentioned about this, and that is on what basis, for what purpose the report has been revised, that has to be forming a part of the audit report, that has to be mentioned. So these are the things which are there in the report. Now coming to this, upload online filing of tax audit report, you have to generate the XML of the and you have to attach balance sheet in PDF form or PDF form, profit and loss account. There are separate cells which are given in the form. By the time of uploading balance sheet, you have to upload to balance sheet for this module. Then profit and loss to profit and loss section, and other attachment. That is, any other attachments are basically related to your any qualifications or that can be forming a part of other attachment. Even cost audit report, there is a separate form which is written. All these size should not exceed 50 MB. Maximum size allowed is 50 MB for uploading. Now what happens in case if your size is exceeding 50 MB, then you can convert it into zip format. Zip format is also allowed. So once you convert it into zip format, the zip format you can upload it, and you have the PDF reducer also size available online. Then reduce the size, but it has to be ensured that this PDF documents are legible while uploading. Otherwise, again, there is a penalty for uploading the incorrect document. It has been seen that in many cases, when we were reviewing the tax audit report, as it has been seen that the audit report form 3CD and form 3CA or 3CB is related to some other client, and the attachment side is related to some other client. So this should not happen, because many cases it has been found out. So generally all the juniors do the work, but uploading should definitely be perfect. And once the tax audit report is uploaded, the SSC's option for the SSC has the option to withdraw. So while approving the report, you can verify what are the attachments which are attached to it. So if any incorrect attachments are there, SSC has the option to reject reject this tax audit report, and then once this SSC is rejected the tax audit report, the fresh audit report can be filed by the tax auditor. But one thing here is to mention that from 1st October 2020, UDIN number is being made mandatory. So UDIN number, if you have filed the tax audit report earlier and you have to approve this, you have to mention you update the UDIN number on the income tax department's website. The 15 days time limit is being given to update this UDIN. Otherwise, if you don't update the UDIN on the website, then on the income tax website, your report will be deleted from the system, and it will be considered as the audit report which has not been filed. So we have to be rules, comply with the accounting standards. Compliance are there, guidelines are there, deadlines are there, laws are there, audits are there, procedures are there. All should be considered while filing the returns, doing the tax audit report and uploading, because it is ultimately our bread and butter. So we have to take proper care. So from the balance sheet of the humanity to the profit and loss account of emotions, CA should always be in a goods book. This is one of the biggest good quote we have got it. But one question may come: how long I have to do the compliance? So compliance is definitely there. They're definitely there. So compliance has to be done. There is no option available. Either you do the audit, you don't do the audit. Friends, I have tried my level best to give the proper justice and cover maximum possible things. So if you have any questions, we can definitely take up.
Yeah, anybody who has question can please unmute themselves and ask the question.
I think I have 10 questions here on the chat. Can I?
Yeah, sure.
I'll definitely take up. One question is there from CA Vidya Shetty, that is, sir, how the amount determined in search and seizure to be disclosed in the tax audit report, whether disclosure required in tax audit report, most of the account search and seizure assessment is going. You have no connection with the search and seizure and all, because what is transaction has happened during the year related to your income and expense, profit and loss account. So if any tax liability has been, tax has been paid, that only you have to disallow it. That is the only thing, because no other reporting is required. Then, sir, can you highlight the changes in the Form 3CD 2021 deletion, additions, and clauses? I think I have already covered all the clauses. If any specific issue is that, definitely you can just take up. Non-qualified person having service income will be covered by 44 AD or whether. See, non-qualified person means, first of all, you have to see whether it fits in the definition of profession or not. Just go to the definition of section 44 AA. And you just verify whether it fits into that, because the category of persons are being defined. And if you see in the ITR also, you have the professional professional categories which are called. You can just refer to. If the books of accounts are maintained on cloud system, whether should we respond again the relevance of here. So you have to give where the place of location of books of accounts that has to be given. That is mandatory. So if the accounts are maintained on the cloud system, it is to ensure that the what the Information Technology Act says, that whenever you are doing the audit and whenever at the time of when the books of accounts are required, if the SSC is unable to produce the required information in the intact form, it will be treated as books of accounts not family. So whatever the books of accounts you are signing it, you should basically ensure that you have a one hard copy printout definitely available, and you keep it on the record. Otherwise, you just mentioned about this, that these are maintained on the cloud system, but in tax audit report, there is no such space where it has been to be required to be mentioned that it is mentioned. The cloud system is basically considered as books of accounts maintained under the computerized system. So in maintenance of books of accounts, you are required to whether the accounts are maintained in the computerized system and what are the reports which are generated, you can report it over there. Then about commission income of DSA will be under 50% or 8%. Commission income basically does not covered by this. This is 44 ADL. You just refer to the guidance note where in detailed explanation is given about this. But commission income definitely comes under from my 44 AD, not 44 ADL. Cash receipts and payment limit applicability to be checked with reference to the personal accounts of the SSA as well as the business receipts and payments of 5%. No, it is basically related to the business receipts and business payment, because you are auditing on account of this for a business audit. You are not doing your personal audit. That is to be kept in mind. So I think all these questions which are there are covered about it. So any more questions that we have, definitely have some time. We can definitely take it up.
Well, if anyone has questions, please unmute yourself and ask the questions.
I think I have given proper justice to the subject, and if I have forgotten something, please forgive me for that. I have tried my level best to cover everything in the best possible time, because to cover 44 clauses at a time, it is practically not possible within the 2 hours time. So whatever the main clauses, and after seeing the tax audit report where the errors are happening, and that I have tried to cover it and give much more emphasis on that, so that mistake should not happen. And it is our endeavor that we should not we should always be in the good books of the department and also in the eyes of the client, because if once there any mistakes are being found out, definitely our integrity is being questioned. And today these are the challenging days wherein our profession has been taken for a ride from both the sides. So anything which you are not comfortable or not, I should definitely say that we should basically try to avoid these things. Whatever thing we are not comfortable in signing, we should not sign it. And if these things are followed by everybody, definitely we can gain the whatever the importance of our profession is there, that can be definitely preserved. That is my personal view.
So one question I think everyone wants to know: will there be any? Is there any representation been made for extension of the tax audit?
From direct tax committee point of view, we have direct tax committee. We have already sent a representation from chamber. We have already presented, and 99.99% I am of the that 99% this extension should come. But only what the thing is that extension when it comes, definitely it creates much and much more botheration on us.
Yeah, that's true, sir.
Because we every month we have some or other deadlines are there, and we are just fighting up with all the deadlines.
Okay, any more questions from anyone? I think you have covered it very detailed manner, so I think no one has questions.
I apologize for some volume disturbance was there in between. The voice was getting slow and all because of something internet connectivity of that.
Yeah, that's okay, sir. No
So
problem.
just I apologize for that, because the things are that when you're dealing with the system, you have to be with the, you have to deal with all these issues that keep on coming. And if anything is that, definitely this any issues relating to tax audit, which is that, and if you think this is not covered, you can definitely send it to us. We'll try our level best to get it. And if any issues are there, you find out in any report or even income tax returns also, any issues are there, you can just forward to our email ID of the institute, that is dtc@ici.in, wherein we represent all such issues which are there. Either it relates to this tax audit report, or it relates to income tax, or it relates to TDS. Please forward your issues to us, so we can definitely, whenever this thing is there, whenever we have every monthly meeting with them, and we keep on sending representation. And you can mark a CC to me also. My email ID is there in the material. I think is you are circulating in the material.
Yeah,
right?
we'll be circulating the
So
material.
in that material, my email ID is also there. You can just mark a CC to me. So whenever the representation is being made, representation goes from all the committees. Thank you very much, everybody, for your patience hearing, and I'm really thankful to all my professional brothers for giving me this, getting it patiently.
Yeah,
Thank you.
sir, I request Ramesh Shetty to please propose vote of thanks.
Is it audible to all of you?
Yeah.
Good evening, and Avinash Ravani is visiting our study circle not for the first time. I think he must have given already about 2-3 lectures in the past also. Personally, he had come to our study circle since last 6-7 years. And he has covered all the classes, 44 classes in 1 hour 30 minutes. And he was in the beginning only, I said that he will cover up in 1 hour 30 minutes. That's a great job which he has done, and very nicely explained all the classes which are relevant for the purpose of doing audit and reporting also. I'm sure at this particular juncture, there will be some issues with regard to the volume or something, because we are already having one issue, the big issue of Corona, and second issue is the virtual classes we are having. Definitely there will be some hiccup will be there. I hope everybody will cooperate in this particular matter. In the short time, I also thank Avinash Ravani for spending his valuable time, making us understand and refreshing our memory for the tax audit in the present days, because that is something which we need to understand and complete the audit. We are having a lot of issues. People are not coming for the work. Clients are not providing the accounts and other things. There are a lot of other issues also we are having, not only learning, but also we are having basic issues of getting the accounts from the clients. We hope that at least in a few days to come, at least they will at least announce the extension of the filing of the returns, because it should not come at the last moment for everybody's surprise. Normally what they do is like Companies Act or something. I hope today's lecture, it was a very knowledgeable. We once again thank Avinash Ravani for spending his time. And on behalf of Bandra Kurla Study Circle, and on behalf of convener and deputy convener and all the members, we once again thank you him for his valuable time spent with us. And we also thank Mangesh ji for and organizing such a wonderful lecture meeting today, and also the Varti Bhutani and all the members for giving their cooperation at this particular point of time. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I thank everyone on behalf of Bandra Kurla Study Circle.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your wonderful organization.